Brothers and sisters, there was a time when our brothers and sisters in the faith went about living in just sheepskin and goat skins and just living in mountain dens, caves of the earth, holes in the ground. They were destitute, afflicted, tormented. They walked in love. Their message was love, and the world hated them. The world wasn't worthy of them. The world was doomed because the world hated love. That's what it is. So there was tribulation and distress in those days, in the past. But Jesus has said, before His coming, there will be a time of unparalleled distress. Matthew 24, verse 21, He says, "For then there will be a great tribulation, such as has not occurred since the beginning of the world until now, nor ever will." Again, it's to be unparalleled. Unparalleled. So I have just something that's I have to say, and I have to share it with you. I don't think enough Christian pastors are. I think they're neglecting the truth. I think an enemy is upon the horizon, and they are neglecting to blow the trumpet. They're neglecting. What I'm talking about is the abomination of desolation. I think all things are lurching forward and bending forward, and all progress of modernity, as far as the secular satanic world, is progressing toward the abomination of desolation. Matthew 24, verse 15, Jesus says, "When you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains." You must flee. Whoever is on the housetop must not go down to get the things out of their house. You must not. You must flee for your life. Don't turn around to get your clothes. Don't go back down to your house. Just run. Just flee. But Jesus said it was spoken of through Daniel. So what He's saying is it happened once as a template, and it's going to happen again. And we know that it did happen once. Daniel spoke about it, and it was fulfilled through Antiochus Epiphanes, when it says Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, the height of which was 60 cubits, and its width 6 cubits, and he set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Now, he made a real image. When I talk about the abomination of desolation, I'm also speaking about the image of the beast. So Jesus said already, He says the abomination of desolation was spoken of by Daniel. It happened once. It was fulfilled through Antiochus and Maccabees 139. It says her sanctuary became desolate as a wilderness. Verse 44-57, Antiochus, he enacted martial law forbidding Torah observance. He forbid people. He was lawless. He was the man of lawlessness. He was a template of the man of lawlessness. He forbid people obey the law of God. And he commanded them to forget the law, and if you would not forget God's commandments, if you would not throw it behind you, you'd be put to death. And he built an altar. Verse 54, chapter 1. And he put it on top of the altar. And whoever wouldn't worship it, whoever wouldn't forget the law of God, would be put to death. But it was also fulfilled in Daniel's day. So it was fulfilled in Daniel's day, and it was fulfilled further on between the Old Testament and the New Testament at the time of the Maccabees, the intertestamental period. And Jesus says it's going to happen again. In Daniel's day, you know about it. He created this image of gold. 666 cubits high and wide altogether, 60 cubits. Its height, 60 cubits, its width, and all these things, but it was in his image. It was a real, this wasn't spiritual, it wasn't metaphysical, it was a real idol. And he commanded people to bow down to this thing. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would not bow down. They were thrown into the fire because of that, as you know. Hopefully. The same thing happened through Antiochus. When the people wouldn't bow, when the people wouldn't forsake the law of God, they were skinned alive and thrown on massive hot plates, massive skillets. They were tortured, they were tormented, they were destitute, afflicted, they were killed. And Jesus says something is coming in that same template, in that same spirit, and it's the same thing. It's going to happen again. But when it happens at the end of the age, there'll be no hope. Unless he were to shorten the days, it says. Unless he were to shorten the days, no flesh would be saved. That's what we read. Unless those days had been cut short, no life would have been saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. So connected to this great tribulation, connected to this abomination of desolation, things are going to be so bad that nobody's going to live unless God in sovereign and almighty power intervenes. This is what it is. Why did it have to be this way at all? Why can't we all been born into heaven? It doesn't matter. This is what it is. And I'm telling you and I'm encouraging you to listen and to think about this. In Revelation, it tells us about this image of the beast. Chapter 13, verse 15, we read, "And it was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast would even speak, and cause as many as do not worship the image of the beast to be killed. And he causes all," pay attention to this, all, verse 16, all. He causes all. He causes all the small and great, rich and poor, free men and slaves, all, to receive a mark, to be given a mark on their foreheads, on their right hands, on their right hand and on their forehead. This image is brought to life. Some people want to spiritualize that and make it something metaphysical. I'm telling you, the template, Jesus says there's a prophetic template. It was spoken about in Daniel. It happened in Daniel's day, Daniel chapter 3. It happened later with Antiochus Epiphanes and the time of the Maccabees. And it's going to happen again. But this image is brought to life. Now, I want you to pay attention. Here's what we have to worry about. We have to worry about there being free cheese on a mousetrap. Okay? I want you to think about this. This is a modern playwright, very famous man, George Bernard Shaw. Okay? He had didactic plays, which they had a deeper meaning. They were supposed to have philosophical, indoctrinating. They were supposed to indoctrinate the public by the means of amusement, right? And mold your mind, mold public opinion. He was intentional about it. They were didactic plays, and he had philosophical prefaces. And he was a Fabian socialist, and he was a wicked man, extraordinarily wicked. G.K. Chesterton he would intellectually battle with him, and he wrote about him in his book called Heretics. It was Heretics preceded the book Orthodoxy, which many of you probably know about. In this book, George Bernard Shaw says that every hungry, half-naked child should be forcibly fattened and clothed. And he says, would not that be an enormous improvement on our existing system, which has already destroyed so many civilizations and is visibly destroying ours in the same way? Seems so kind, doesn't it? But what precedes that statement? He says, you can't see it, but here's what it is. Suppose we were to abolish all penalties for such activities as rape, murder, incendiary, burglary, there's the preface preceding this. So suppose we abolish penalties for all such activities and decide that poverty is the one thing we will not tolerate. That every adult with less than, say, 365 pounds a year shall be painlessly but inexorably killed. So if you don't make $365 a year, at least $1 a day, we're going to kill you. And he talks in another place. Of these death panels where you need to come before a table of the counselors of this, the world order, essentially, and justify your existence. If you can't prove that you produce as much as you consume, well, then you shall be painlessly but inexorably killed with a gentlemanly gas. He calls it a gentlemanly gas. Now, this man lived from about 1856, somewhere around there, to he lived to be 90 years old. Do we know of anyone that used a gentlemanly gas? To get rid of people? We do. Hitler did. And Hitler was studying Nietzsche. Doubtlessly. And Nietzsche, I want you to think about Nietzsche. We know that Nietzsche said God is dead. But he said something far more profound. But before we go there, think about this. Nietzsche, who said God is dead, his father was a Lutheran pastor. His dad was a Lutheran pastor. And he was such a pious kid. H.L. Mencken said that Nietzsche was so pious as a child that kids wouldn't even approach him, and they made fun of him. They called him preacher boy. Think about that the next time you mock somebody. Think about what it turned Nietzsche into, how it twisted his mind to complete destruction. No friends, nobody was kind. They mocked him and made fun of him. Now we know what Nietzsche said, God is dead, but it's beyond that. It's beyond God is dead. He said, who gave us this sponge to completely wipe away the horizon? Who gave us the power to unchain the earth from its orbit? To unchain the earth from the sun? Who? He says, shall we not have to take God's place? Just to be worthy of the deed? Just to be worthy of killing God, the murderer of all murderers? And that's what he's saying. So you know the parable of the madman. The madman went down into a village in the early morning light and began to cry out, where is God? I'm looking for him. And everybody began to mock him, right? Maybe he's gone maybe he's hiding, maybe he's afraid of us, maybe he's moved away or something like this. And he says, no, I'll tell you where he is. We've killed him. You and I have killed him. Every one of us. And then at the end of it, people are, he's piercing them through with his eyes, and he says, nah, never mind. It's not my time. It's not my time yet. So Nietzsche said, some men are born after they die. And he knew that his words and his message was from another age, for an age to come. Generations in the future. But the point was this, if we've killed God, we have to take his place, don't we? Because nature abhors vacuum. Now pay attention, Nietzsche said that when he believed, he was convinced that in the future, Germans would look back and say that Heinrich Heine and Friedrich Nietzsche were the greatest German poets of all. Even though he was truly Polish by descent, he just moved in. But now why is this Heinrich Heine also important in the equation? Heinrich Heine wrote a poem that said this. Heinrich Heine said, I called the devil and he came. His face with wonder I must scan. He is not ugly, he is not lame. He is a delightful, charming man. But you read on in his life, and Heinrich Heine repented. And I was reading some of Heinrich Heine's writings on religion, and he said, those who live like atheists, complete nihilists, must remember the story of Nebuchadnezzar. They must remember the story of Nebuchadnezzar, that God can humble arrogant men. There was another playwright named August Strindberg. He came before this man just by a little bit, and Steinberg was very experimental. I mean, he inspired Eugene O'Neill and all these other things, and he's inspired many playwrights. And he was of the naturalist school. But he also went into surrealism and many other things, and he was on the verge of madness. And he wrote a book called The Inferno, where he's losing his mind. And he was a chemist, and he's just a chemist and a playwright and all these things, and he's just an extraordinarily intellectual man. And he was a historian and a painter. And Nietzsche went mad in the end of his days, like Nebuchadnezzar. And Ravi Zacharias says he's read about it, but he said Nietzsche ended his life muttering scripture to himself. I haven't read that, but I've heard it. But Heinrich Heine, the man Nietzsche praised, said we must all remember Nebuchadnezzar. And Steinberg, in his book called The Blue Book, where he's reminiscing over everything, and he just pours out all of his intellectual fortitude on just everything. He says that we should remember that Hegel, Marx loved Hegel, so did Nietzsche, but that man repented at the end of his life, and so did Heine, but Nietzsche did not. But the key to it all is, he says, remember Nebuchadnezzar. When you're in arrogance and you think you rule the world and you think everything's okay, you think you're on top of it all, beware, because God can bring you low and cut you down. God can cut you down. And we have that lesson from Nebuchadnezzar. It all goes back to him, this image of the beast. He wanted everyone to worship this thing, and it was in his image. And he was humbled. In the end, God drove him to the earth. He just gave him the mind of an animal. He gave him the mind of a beast, but he humbled him. He brought him to nothing because he wouldn't humble himself. God humbled him. I want you to think about something. I want you to humble yourself just enough to hear me pleading with you. I'm going to share something that is so important. I believe it's so important that you listen. I want you to pay attention to me. There's a man named Nick Bostrom, and he wrote about something called a singleton, okay? Please pay attention. It's in the Future of Humanity. He's part of the Future of Humanity Institute. He's a faculty of philosophy at Oxford University. And in the Linguistic and Philosophical Investigations, Volume 5, Number 2, published 2006, page 48 through 54, he wrote about the singleton. This man's from Oxford. This is no lunatic bum on the street, okay? What is the definition of a singleton? First, we ought to mention the singularity, the technological singularity. You know that technology, it doubles in its power, computing capability, capacity, and it shrinks in size. And we are on a exponential curve, not linear, but it's exponential. It's curving like this. It's going up. And one day, computers will diagnose their own problems with such rapidity that humanity will be obsolete. Now listen to me. Hugo de Garis wrote a book called, before we even get to Nick Bostrom, Raymond Kurzweil and Hugo de Garis and Elon Musk, who invented the Tesla battery, many people, Stephen Hawking, Bill Gates, are talking about, they believe that this, what would be called a singleton, artificial intelligence, is more dangerous than the invention of the atomic bomb. These are the world's greatest intellects, and they're not even Christian, okay? And they're saying this is dangerous. That technology is going to advance. Raymond Kurzweil, Google consults this man. He's just a genius, okay? You can look him up. Stevie Wonder made a bet with him. They said, Ray, he says, I bet that you can't make my keyboard sound like a trumpet or something like this. And on a bet, he made the Kurzweil, a synthesizer. This is the man. So that's the level that this guy's mind is on. He's considered the world's foremost prophet. Literally, because he foretells events and they happen almost exactly. But it's all through mathematical and algorithms and just projections from statistics and just projecting into the future all of the data. It's not mystical, but it's extraordinarily accurate. And he says by 2045, we will have, this is the sort of, this computing power that we will have. He says, you know, the smartphone's about this big, right? He says, we will have something. We will have technology 1,000,000 times more powerful than the smartest smartphone. But it will be the size of a blood cell. Why does that matter? It matters because they're creating synthetic neurons and they're reverse engineering the mind. You know, Obama had this brain initiative to study the brain and and they're making a synthetic mind. And this is the next step of human evolution, as they see it, is merging technology into our brains directly. We'll send thought data out and we'll all be connected through brain-computer interfacing. We'll all be connected in a mass corporate consciousness, just as you would text or just as you would send an email, but you can do it directly from your thoughts into someone else's mind, okay? This is what it is, this is what's coming, this is what they say is coming. But the machine part of this, not just merging with machines. According to Hugo de Garis, who's currently working for Chinese government, he says he believes by developing these machines that are trillions upon trillions of times faster than we are. And they'll be interconnected everywhere. Anything that's connected to the internet, they have the eyes. Every single camera lens that exists is an eye. Would be an eye for this big Borg-like machine, okay? But he's saying, he wrote a book called The Art-Elect War. I know I'm being scatterbrained, but just bear with me. He wrote a book called The Art-Elect War, and he calls it a bitter controversy over whether or not we should build massively intelligent, godlike machines. And he says it will create a scientific religion and people will be tempted to worship these things, okay? Think about it. Just think about this. You're going to be able to design a synthetic human. You give it the eye color, the size of the breasts and hips and body and sexual organs, and they'll be able to gyrate and spin and secrete lubrication and everything that your carnal mind could ever want. You're going to be able to have a synthetic human. It will be an absolute slave that you can control with your mere thoughts. This isn't me saying this. This is geniuses saying this. But the first one of these that exists, what will it be called? Well, Nick Bostrom calls it a singleton. You take the singularity, and when there's that boom, where it's so much more powerful that it makes humans obsolete. Humans cannot upgrade it at all. It diagnoses all of its own problems. This first cyborg, android, whatever, it will be godlike, and people will be tempted to worship it. This is what Hugo de Garis says. And he says some people will want to retain their humanity and do things manually and just be men and work and have their garden and do what they do. They don't want to merge with machines. They don't want mind-reading capability and all these to access the internet directly from their head and turn the channel just by thinking about it. Or they don't want smart homes. They don't need their minds tapped into everything. And they just want to be men. And he says there's going to be a war. That's why it's called the Art-Elect War, the artificial intellect. That's what Art-Elect means. Between Cosmos and Terrans. There will be a war. Cosmos, those who want to go beyond, those who want to spread out, right? And the Terrans, terra firma, Earth, they want to stay earthbound and stay human. This all is tying together. This is one massive, this is what Nietzsche talked about as the Übermensch. He says man was stretched out. Man is a tightrope stretched over an abyss between the animals and the Übermensch, the overman, the man beyond man. And here we are now, stretched out between animals, as they say, and machines, merging with machines. And they say they're going to create life. They're going to create life. This is what Jesus said, and this is what Revelation says. They gave life to the image. The image, they've always caused men to worship it. You saw the image that Nebuchadnezzar made. It was a real physical image. And he had people worship the dang thing. It wasn't spiritual, it wasn't metaphysical, it was real. And I'm telling you, you pastors, you people are neglecting the truth. You're neglecting your duty if you're not speaking about this. This is coming, okay? Listen to me. Almost all of these people that want to develop this technology, for instance, Hugo de Garis again, not only does he want to create and to merge with machines, not only does he think we're going to kill everything on Earth, like Stephen Hawking and Bill Gates and Elon Musk, they think we're on the verge of killing everything, or not being the masters, not using technology and we're the masters. But you eventually, when you relegate all your duties to a machine, and it's doing everything for you and making all your choices for you, who then is the master? If a machine is making all your choices and doing it all for you, if it's doing your math equations and it's doing everything, you relegate all these, then who's the master? And they're saying, indeed, we may become slaves to these machines. They say that mitochondria once had many functions in a cell, but it gave up those functions one by one until now it just provides energy, an energy powerhouse in the cell. Humans, we used to have to manually do math and cook and do all these things, but more and more and more we're giving up our functions for machines to do them. This is a danger. Now, pay attention to me, please. All of this is going one place. That which has been will be. Man is creating his own God. It's true. Man has always tried to do that. And then when you take the principle of the technological singularity and you encapsulate that in a android-like, right, synthetic human body and a mind, I believe it will be called a singleton. Now, Nick Bostrom, back to him. Nick Bostrom of Oxford University says this: a singleton is a set with only one number. Listen to me. A world order in which there is a single decision-making agency at the highest level. Listen to me. Are you hearing that? Are you people, you churches out here, you want to get, what are you doing? These are the people at the top of the world controlling everything, telling you this, they want to do this, it's going to happen, we can't avoid it, we might kill all things on earth. Jesus told you there's going to be an abomination of desolation. Men are going to have to bow down and worship it. It's going to be of a global economic order. You can't buy or sell without the mark. And they bring an image to life. Man creates life. You say it can't happen. God said at the Tower of Babel they could have done anything they put their mind to. And I'm telling you, the last straw, man makes life. And this thing that we make, as Hugo de Garis says, the PhD, the roboticist, the man that studies artificial intelligence, he says it will be a technological religion. Men will be tempted to worship this thing. They're talking about it. I'm not making this up. So back to Nick Bostrom. He says a world order. A world order. This goes back to Nimrod, who had a world order, who was a great hunter, who built his tower into the sky, and was doubtlessly, as his name says, Nimrod means let us rebel. So when you're the leader of the world government, all the population was gathered in the plains of Shinar, who do you have to rebel against? He was rebelling against God. Who was he hunting finally? God. He is the spirit behind Nietzsche. The spirit that was in him was behind Nietzsche, saying, let us rebel. He was hunting God. God is dead. We're out to hunt God and usurp his kingdom and authority. The world order and the Antichrist and the global government goes all the way back to Nimrod. It's repeated over and over again through Nebuchadnezzar, and in the end, finally, the Antichrist. Even the Pope wants a global government. All these people have always wanted a world order. We talk about a new world order. But here he is, Nick Bostrom, saying a singleton is a world order in which there's a single decision-making agency at the highest level. Do you like that? Well, of course. You want to know why they're going to say this is good? Because if we all get the brain-computer interfacing, then empathy levels can be adjusted by this single decision-making agency at top. So there won't be hatred and there won't be complete sorrow. Everything will be balanced and it will be heaven on earth. We're going to create it, they think. What is its power? Nick Bostrom says, 1, the ability to prevent any internal or external threats. The ability to prevent any internal or external threats to its own existence and supremacy. And 2, the ability to exert effective control over major features of its domain, taxation, territorial allocation, control. It can exert control over how much it's going to tax you, what land it wants to use, whatever it wants to do. If it wants to take your land or abolish land or private property altogether, take all of your money and just tax you 100%, and it can exert effective control. It is again a world order in which there's a single decision-making agency at the highest level. Do you want a single decision-making agency at the highest level? Do you want someone or something to make all your decisions for you? To override you? Now, examples and elaboration of a singleton is what he says. A world dictatorship could serve as a singleton, is what he says. A world dictatorship could serve as a singleton. Does that sound good to you? I mean, I took the notes. This is from, you can get online and see this stuff. Linguistic and Philosophical Investigation, Volume 5, Number 2, 2006, page 48 through 54. Or it could be a friendly, super-intelligent machine. It could be a world dictatorship, but it could be a friendly, super-intelligent machine. And that would serve as another kind of singleton, assuming it was powerful enough that no other entity could threaten its existence or thwart its plans. So literally, it's friendly, it's super intelligent machine, but nothing can threaten its existence or thwart its plans. Whatever it wants to do is going to happen, absolutely. In section 5 of his little essay, it talks about this. It's the singleton hypothesis, and I took some excerpts, and it says here, some anticipated technologies might facilitate the creation of a singleton, such as improved surveillance, including reliable lie detection and mind control technologies, communication technologies, and artificial intelligence. He says, now look at this. Look at this! A catastrophic event such as a war fought with weapons of mass destruction could accelerate such a development. That is, and he says, now look, it took the world wars to create the League of Nations and then the United Nations. See that? Massive catastrophic destruction to bring about this global government. And he's saying it's a world order in which there is a single decision-making agency at the highest level. And then he's praising the world wars because it created the League of Nations and United Nations. We are told in Revelation 13, pay attention to me, that no man, whether he's great or he's nothing, whether he's rich or poor, whether he's free or slave, nobody is going to buy or sell without this mark, without allegiance to this image that is brought to life, that is able to speak and able to kill everyone that will not worship it. And these genius men are saying that this singleton, this artellect, will be godlike. It will be massively intelligent, trillions of times smarter than any man on earth, all men on earth combined even. You don't think that they would want to create a war to bring this about if they had to? Jesus said, unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. None. He goes on to say this. Once formed, a future singleton might be perpetually stable. This could happen if surveillance, mind control, and other security technologies develop in such a way as to enable a singleton to effectively prevent the emergence of internal challenges. Nothing can challenge this thing. Do you get it? Nick Bostrom, Oxford University, Future of Humanity Institute. All of the benefits that we will have. You could take a gene from an eagle's eye and implant it in your eye, and you'll be able to have the sight of you'll be able to inject a salamander gene into your body to regenerate limbs that have been ripped off or you've been hurt. I mean, what they're talking about is endless. And you think about your phone. Think about, a caveman like me, Chase, me, man. That's how they talked, right? It's a primitive id type of. You have your phone, and what is iPhone? Think about that as a programming, as a primitive subconscious programming that the camps that are set up. iPhone, my person, iPhone. It's like Chase. It's merging man with technology. What about Android? Think about it. You're holding these things to your head all day. This is programming. This is neural acclimation. This is preparing you for what's coming. And believe me, when you find out that you can design androids to be sex slaves in your house that you can control just by your thoughts, you're going to want it. When you see people that are crippled or blind being able to see again, they're going to say, we are the true gods. We are compassionate. We will heal you. We will balance all empathy levels. There will be no more rage and no more depression. This will be the single decision-making agency at the highest level. And you will all be interconnected through a neural web, the World Wide Web, but connecting to you neurally. And they have non-intrusive hats. They have video games now. You put on the helmet and it reads your brainwaves, and you can control things on the screen. They're starting out with kids, right? So it's going to be fun. It's going to be good. There's always free cheese on a mousetrap. But I'm warning you to flee from these things. They are coming. This is the image of the beast. Transhumanism is pure danger. This singleton, it sounds so stupid. A shingleton. Singleton sounds stupid. But this is the most dangerous thing. Elon Musk, Stephen Hawking, Bill Gates, all the brainiacs of the world are saying we could literally, this is worse than the atom bomb. We might be enslaved. If these machines begin to think that we're a virus, if we're a virus in their system, they could obliterate everything. Go look it up. Go look it up if you think I'm lying. So I want to end with a prayer. And I want you to remember Nebuchadnezzar. Remember what Heinrich Heine said. Remember Steinberg saying, we should go to Nebuchadnezzar. When Nebuchadnezzar, the Jews were supposed to be, listen to this, the Jews were called to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. He says, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, in Exodus 19 verse 6. But they weren't. They hid their light under a basket. They became isolated. They didn't share the gospel. They began to look at Gentiles as filth and scum, and they didn't share the message that they had. They didn't go out and share the law and the good word and the gospel. So God took them all captive and stripped their land away and took everything away that they had and everything that they cherished and made them captives in Babylon. And then he drove that king, that arrogant king, to his knees. He cut him down until he was humbled. And you know what happened? Nebuchadnezzar, that pagan, sent out a letter throughout all the kingdom. Throughout all the kingdom. To the ends of the earth. And he glorified God. He shared the gospel. Can you believe it? Nebuchadnezzar, and he said this, Nebuchadnezzar the king, to all the peoples, nations, and men of every language that live in all the earth, may your peace abound. It has seemed good to me to declare the signs and wonders which the Most High God has done for me. How great are his signs and how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation. He gives his story. My friends, he gives his story and he says this: I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise, at the very end of his letter, I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise, exalt, and honor the King of heaven, for all his works are true and his ways just, and he is able to humble those who walk in pride. You pastors and you people, if you are not listening to me, you're going to be cut down, but you're not going to be restored. When you take this mark, and if you take this thing and you get involved, there's no redemption. There's no redemption. You must listen. You must humble yourself, and then God will lift you up. So go out and don't make him have to cut you down. Don't make this happen, because there's a point of no return. I'm saying that Nebuchadnezzar, proclaim God's word. Be like him. Humble yourself now and declare his power and sovereignty. He's declaring the end from the beginning, and it's clear. All the signs are here. If you have ears to hear, then listen. Prepare to meet your God. Go to the cross of Christ. Jesus Christ died for your sin. It was God in the flesh. God came to the earth in the flesh and lived perfectly. Did not break the laws that we have. He did not sin the way we did. And then he went to the electric chair of his day. He went to the cross and died for our crimes to redeem us from sin, and rose again to show us that he had the power over death, and that when we die, we will never really die. But death is an open door to life through Christ, and he ensures life eternal. You have to think, my friends, if you want these sex slave bots, just remember this. Don't. God has said this. God invented breasts, and God invented hips, and a woman's body and a man's body for the woman. He invented these pleasures, and he's telling you that that's a shadow, and that the kingdom of heaven is more extraordinary than all the orgiastic pleasures of earth. Why? Because he's a good God, but he will not be mocked. Heaven is worth more than all the pleasures this cyborg or android could ever give you. The God that invented sex, so that heaven is infinitely beyond that. And sex itself is just a shadow of what is truly coming. So let's pray. Father in heaven, I know that the ship is going to sink, the ship of our civilization, of our economy, of everything we trust in, of man's strength and man's wealth and man's pride. It's all coming, it's all going down, it's swirling, it's into a whirlpool of just pure, cataclysmic, just doom, just peril and distress. And I pray, Father, I know that not all of us have to sink, not all of us have to die, not all of us have to be pulled down into the vortex. I just ask that, Father, you would give strength to the listeners, to heed the word, to cling to Christ, to put their trust in him, to obey his commandments, to flee from sin. Help us to humble ourselves and be like Nebuchadnezzar, to proclaim your glory and your word and your will, and not to hide your word, but to humble ourselves so that we don't have to be cut down. For your glory and our good. In the name of Yeshua, your Son. Amen.